Hello guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures. And today, after a short break, I decided I just needed a break from YouTube, but back at it again. We have got the Planet Zoo North American Animal Pack. So this has a bunch of different animals, about 8 different animals that had come over the North American continent. So it's very, very cool. And just a quick side note, we can see I've made sure to get one of the texture maps, which is really awesome. Put some water here and there. Looks really, really nice, wouldn't you agree? But yeah, anyway, let's get started to the first animal here. So, our first animal is the exhibit animal. We always start with the exhibit animal with these things. But we have got the American Bullfrog, so let's get ourselves in Ansel mode. So let's make sure we get a good look at our little friends. Let's see if we can find them hanging out there. There we are. And I got an albino one, so we'll have a look at him later, but I want to get a good look at you. There's one there. Look at you. Ooh. See, just wish there. There we are. Get a good look. Let's see if we can get a better look from... There we are. 2 there. Wonderful boys. So, the American Bullfrog, as you can tell, also known as the bullfrog, are a species of frog, or frog, technically the only term, is from eastern Canada and the United States, so typically from the east, and is the largest true frog in North America, and is known to live around permanent water bodies such as koi ponds, swamps, ponds, lakes, pretty much anywhere there's water, you'll find a frog, which is still pretty cool. So yeah, these guys are, obviously you can see, quite greenish, olive green base color with all sorts of cool different markings. You can get albino ones as well. It's like green-brown, a really nice mix. And they've got these like pupils, almond-shaped pupils and brown irises. And they are sexually dimorphic along with these webbed toes. They're sexually dimorphic. That means the males are smaller than the females, so one sex is larger than the other. And the females have yellow throats, and the males have larger, trypana larger in the eye, and the females about the same size. But the bullfrog can measure from 3.6 to 6 inches, or 9 to 15 centimeters in snout to vent length, so that's from the snout to their cloaca. And they typically grow fast within their first 8 months of life. So they will typically grow between 5 to 175 or 1.8 to 6.17 ounces. And the largest mature individuals can get up to about 500 grams or about 1.1 pounds. But in some cases, there have been recorded bullfrogs to get up to about 800 grams or 1.8 pounds. And the largest bullfrog that's been recorded is up to 20 centimeters or 8 inches in snout to vent length, and is the largest frog in North America. So as I mentioned, these guys are found pretty much across the eastern United States and Canada. So they can be found in places like Newfoundland and as far west as Kansas and Oklahoma. Also be found, even though they're largely absent in Florida, but they can be not found in places like Cape Cod. Still very big general distribution. But they are also quite invasive because they've been introduced in areas for food. That includes in Europe, Japan, parts of Asia as well, and also the western US, so that caused them to be invasive as well. And they are considered in a lot of these places, especially in the European Union, as an invasive species and is controlled as such. And these guys have a really interesting breeding behavior. So the bullfrog breeding season lasts for typically about 2 to 3 months, and they basically follow them from last May to early June, where they kind of just do their thing. And they have 3 different distinctive calls that they use. And also, a side note, they get the name bullfrog because one of their calls kind of sounds like a bull, so it's called the bullfrog. And in different areas, especially farther from the equator or on the equator, they will tend to have longer breeding seasons. And when they males will kind of be present at a breeding pod for longer period with females, and then what will happen is that the males will join them in the water, and then the male will only clasp females that indicated their willingness to mate, and they will clasp on them and then release kind of like what would you call it? Spawns. So the female will lay her eggs, and then he will release the sperm right on top of her as the eggs are laid. And yeah, these guys are also quite aggressive. They're quite territorial, especially through posturing and visual display. So it looks really interesting. But they are pretty intimidating to other frogs. Very, very big, wonderful animals. And these guys also, when they're young as larvae, they will show a preference for living in shallow water, and that also as a defense from predators, where they'll also pump water through their gills to breathe, and then they'll trap bacteria. They're basically filter feeders as babies. But then about 8 to 10 months, their metamorphizing rate, so the time they'll turn from a tadpole to a frog, is usually about a few months, but can be up to 3 years in the north. So it depends on the kind of how fast they grow, because the cooler water can slow their development. And the maximum lifespan estimated for these guys is about 8 to 10 years, but one frog has lived up to 16 years in captivity. And these guys are voracious predators. They pretty much eat anything they can get their mouths around, range from rodents, small lizards, snakes, amphibians, crayfish, bats, scorpions, birds, many types of invertebrates, just anything they can get their mouths around. And they actually use their tongue like other frogs. They'll kind of just stick their tongue out and go, and grab prey. So it's really, really interesting. These guys also have a pretty interesting ecology. They are important prey items for all sorts of birds, especially large herons, river otters as well, lots of predatory fish, other amphibians, kingfishers, American alligators, good for especially juvenile alligators, but the juveniles are usually unpalatable to many animals, but they are kind of just consumed indiscriminately. But they also use them as game, and people consume their legs. That's why they were introduced to places around the world for food. So yeah, really interesting guys there. And I think that's worth talking about. So what we're going to do is now go over the Zoopedia and look at these wonderful guys. So let's exit this view. So look at you. Look at that one little Simon there. He's going around. Wonderful frog. And then we can see the albino one here. Really, really cool. So now we have a look at the Zoopedia. So the Zoopedia here, let's have a look. We'll see the change of Zoopedia. Yep, least concern. So they are clearly doing quite well. Invasive in a lot of areas across the world. This is their natural range from Canada and US. So pretty much the eastern US. 1 to 4 they can be housed in. Though there's no dominance hierarchy, but the males may fight. Polygamous, so they can run whatever they want. Sizes pretty much as we expected. These are kind of the average to large individuals. Sexual maturity about 4 years. They're sterile till they die. 1 or 2 per mating event. Gestation period of 3 months. Interbirth period of 9 months, and difficult to reproduce in captivity. Some other little facts about them. They lay about 20,000 eggs during a reproductive event, as I mentioned. They're also hunted in southern USA as a source of food. The American Bullfrog is so named because of the bellow. And they can thrive in water temperatures between 15 and 30 degrees Celsius. However, tadpoles will develop with abnormalities in water temperatures higher than 32 degrees. And they are generous predators and have been known to eat birds, bats, and tarantulas. Yeah, pretty much mentioned most of that. So now we're going to move on to the next animal here. So we're going to move on to amphibians, to more mammals again. So we have got the black-tailed prairie dog. Really, really cool little guy that I'm glad got in. So the black-tailed prairie dog is one of the 2 species of prairie dog that it can be found around the Great Plains or the central part of America. So they can be found pretty much from most southerly parts of Canada to the most northerly parts of Mexico, and basically right a big strip of through the Great Plains in the middle of the US. So these guys I consider least concerned, but they're only about 5% of their historic commonness, so they are greatly reduced, but they are still quite common, so that's good at least. So these guys, as you can see, they're generally quite tan in colour, and they have lighter coloured bellies, and you can see they get their name, the black-tailed prairie dog, because of their black tail. And they can get quite big as well. Adults can get about 1.5 to 3 pounds, or about 0.68 to 1.36 kilograms, with males on average being heavier than females. And body length will range from about... Ooh, have a look and walk through the tunnel. Peeking through. Body length will normally range from 14 to 17 inches, or 36 to 43 centimeters, with about a 3-4 inch tail, or 7.6 to 10.2 inch tail. And you can see the black tails and these long black claws have been used for digging, as they're kind of their expertise, which is pretty cool. As I mentioned, found from pretty much southern Saskatchewan to Chihuahua, I believe it's pronounced, Chihuahua, Mexico, and also just found in a big strip around the bottom of the United States, or middle of the United States, I mean. So these guys, as I mentioned, native to grassland habitats. They'd be pretty much found prairies, mixed prairies, just any kind of prairie, steppes and grasslands, they will be there. And they will pretty much eat whatever they can. They mainly feed on buffalo grass and western wheatgrass, especially in these habitats that have been grazed by native and non-native herbivores. They like that. And a lot of their colonies also occur near rivers, so they do like a nice water source. And they could also tolerate high degrees of disturbance over time. So they really create, new colonies also really created in rangeland that's in good and excellent condition. Though, however, long-term heavily grazed land areas reduces the quality of soil due to soil erosion. So they colonize these heavily grazed sites and kind of take them over and make them better. So these guys are also pretty limited by soil type because they like different types of soil. So deep alluvial soils with medium defined textures and occasionally gravel, they will kind of avoid or do that. They also like soil that's not prone to flooding or collapsing, and they do not select specific types to dig in, but they kind of just find the ones that work best for their construction, such as clay soils and things like that. And they also live in pretty high density, so the territorial boundaries of these guys are determined by the area that's occupied by a single group, and they can also be for little groups, can be about 0.1 acres or about 1/4 of a hectare or 4/10 of a hectare. And their population densities heavily depend on how much food they eat and all that. Let's have a look at them fighting there. Look at that. They're probably having a bit of a fight there. It'll be fine. Really, really wonderful. So these guys, as I mentioned, they feed on pretty much whatever they can. Lots of grasses and sedges. Also feed on occasionally grasshoppers. Also bison scats, another common food for them. And yeah, pretty much all that. And prairie dogs live in huge colonies. They can range from as much as 5 to thousands of individuals and can be subdivided in more than a few more wards, where they kind of all hang out together and rely on each other for survival. They watch prey. They even have complex social calls that they'll use to alert each other of different predators. So if it's an eagle, they have a different call for eagle, another one for, what's another animal? Coyote, animals like that. So they will have different calls for different animals, which is pretty, pretty cool. And these guys, they usually breed at about 2 years old. We'll talk about these really cute babies. How can you not love these guys? So they're typically, minimum breeding age for these guys is about 2 years old, but yearlings may breed if food is abundant. The mating season will occur from February to April, and but varies on latitude and sites, just depends on a lot of things. And their gestation period is about 34 days, and they will pretty much only one litter is produced a year from these guys, and the mean number of litter sizes from 3 to 4.9 individuals, so 3 to 5. And they'll open their eyes at about 30 days old. They're atricial, that means they remain below ground where the mother comes back to nurse them. That could be about after 7 weeks, and they completely mature at about 15 months old. The lifespan for these guys is unknown in the wild, but they males are usually more than 3 years old, experience high mortality, and also females may live longer, so the estimated kind of ages is 5 to 7 years old for males and females respectively. So yeah, really, really cool. They have high mortality because of high predation, also human factors such as trapping, poisoning, shooting as well. Other natural factors can be infanticide, disease, and predation, since being so close together can increase their risk of disease. So there's lots of natural controls for these guys. And also another thing about these guys is that they're so important for these ecosystems where they live in. So they used to be the common food for the rare animal, the black-footed ferret. So a huge reduction in their populations pretty much drove the black-footed ferret to their extinction. They also, other species such as swift fox and burrowing owls require them to either take their burrows or feed on them themselves. They also move a lot of soil, so that can increase the productivity of grasslands. And also they help, often large herbivores such as bison, cows, and pronghorn will like to hang out where prairie dogs have moved some soil, because it usually seems to be the most productive. which is pretty cool. So yeah, as I mentioned, these guys are kind of considered pests in their ranchland, but so their population is highly fragmented. Oh, can't even speak right. Fragmented, but then their numbers have been greatly reduced, and they're also pretty susceptible to plagues. So that's another thing that could affect them. And they are much restricted range, but they are doing okay. So hopefully we can get more prairie dogs in the world. You cannot complain about that. And yeah, I think a really cool animal to put in the game. So let's move on to the next one. We've got, from the black-tailed prairie dog, we've got the Arctic fox. Really, really wonderful here. Look at this wonderful model. Really great animal. So, the Arctic fox, also known as the white fox or the polar fox, they're a small species of fox that is native to the Arctic regions across the northern parts of Eurasia and America. And they are pretty generalist. They'll feed on pretty much anything. Lemmings, seal pups, seabirds, berries, seaweeds, insects, whatever they can get their mouths around. And they can get pretty big. Their body range ranges from about 46 to 68 centimeters, or 18 to 27 inches, with a generally rotund body that you can see with this very, very impressive coat that allows them to trap a lot of body heat. So they must endure a temperature difference between 90 to 100 degrees Celsius, or 90 to 160 to 180 degrees Fahrenheit, between the external environment and their core temperature. That's why they have really tight fur, and also they curl up. Oh, I forgot to talk about the prairie dogs. See, I always forget that. We'll talk about the prairie dogs real quick. So the black-tailed prairie dogs live in the steppes, mentioned that. So as you can see, the range there. 2 to 12 in the game, 2 to 2, yeah. As I mentioned, the sizes, so sexual maturity, 2 years old, sterility or death, 2 to 4 babies per mating, 2 incubation period, 12 into birth period, and average breeding captivity. And remember, the squirrel family, they're also very sensitive to low frequency sounds that allows them to hear predators. Although not endangered, there's only 5% of their range. They also have such different communications with their pack members, also, and mentioned increased species. And they're like American bisons, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, back to the foxes. Sorry about that. It's hard when you're used to mods. I'm used to the mods. But yeah, really wonderful Arctic foxes here. So they kind of have a boom and bust breeding period. So usually it depends on the lemmings and voles, which kind of have boom and bust cycles every 3 to 5 years. And you can see this is the adults with the winter coat, and the young babies here, since they are born in the spring and summer, they have the summer coat. So you can see the contrast there. Really, really wonderful. A diet, as I mentioned, pretty much eat everything. They have these white coats that allow them to camouflage into the these white coats that the adults have allowed them to camouflage in the white snow. And they are the average head to body length for the males about 55 centimeters with a range of 46 to 68, as I mentioned. Females average slightly smaller at 52 with a range of 41 to 55. And in some regions, there's not really much difference between the sizes. They average about 3.5 kilos with a range of about 3.2 to 9.4 kilos, with females being slightly smaller on average between 1.4 and 3.2 kilos. So a large female is about the size of a small male. So these guys, as I mentioned, found pretty much all across the northern parts of Eurasia and America. So they range pretty much from Svalbard all the way to northern Quebec and the Kenai Peninsula, also in Alaska. So pretty much everywhere, and the only native land mammal of Iceland. So that's another cool little fact. But yeah, these guys were hunted near extinction just because of their coat. People liked their white coat, and it was pretty sad of them, of course. So there are areas where they are considered endangered, though overall they are considered least concern. But they are also highly affected by climate change because of drawn-out winters. It also can affect things like polar bears are more likely to be around on the land since there's not enough sea ice for them to hunt on, so that increases the risk of them hunting their babies, things like that. So things like climate change also affects the lemmings. It's just a whole bunch of systems that can negatively affect these guys. And now, before we move on, we'll talk about the reproduction. So, let's find the right information. So these guys typically live in frost-free dens. that can have complex tunnels and such that are easily accessible, what they use to avoid predators. And their main prey is the lemming, so that affects the boom-bust period that I mentioned. And they fluctuate every 3 to 5 years. But breeding for these guys usually takes place between April and May, and the gestation period is about 52 days, or a little about a couple months. The litters may contain as much as 25 babies, so that's pretty impressive. Though I imagine the average is much less than that. And they will young will emerge at about 3 to 4 weeks old after being born, and at about 9 weeks of age they are weaned from their mothers. And another interesting thing about these guys as well, that these guys are monogamous, but also will have complex social groups. So the Arctic foxes are more likely to be promiscuous when predators and prey are abundant, and also display more complex social behaviors. And also larger packs will form in these kind of territories, especially with breeding and non-breeding females. And especially on places like the coast of Svalbard, it really depends. The frequency of complex social structures is larger than inland foxes because they remain monogamous because of food availability. So usually when there's less food, they'll stay more monogamous. And though, on a unique case, however, Iceland is where monogamy tends to be the most prevalent, which is pretty interesting. But yeah, really cool animals regardless. We'll have a look at the thing here. So least concern, as I mentioned, population 110,000. We can see their range here, very, very large range. It's all across the northern parts, so before, in front of the tree line. Also species data, 1 to 8, up to 6 males, up to 6 females. That'll be 12. 1 to 5 either side, alpha male, alpha female. They are monogamous, they are quite shy, and humans can't leave their habitat. As I mentioned, the sizes, so average size male is about 3 to 5 kilos. And a female is about 2.9. Actually, sexual maturity 1 year, sterility about 10 years. Number of offspring 3 to 6. Incubation period about a month, which is a bit short compared to real life. Interbirth period about 12 months, and pretty easy to reproduce in captivity, so that's good. Really, really wonderful animals. They also dive in the snow. I don't think I've seen this animation yet, but they will jump and dive in the snow, which I think is pretty cute. So yeah, now we're going to move on to the next animal. So we've done some more mammals, but we got a reptile coming up. So how can you not love reptiles? Excuse me. So we've got the wonderful guy here. We have got, where's our big male? Is that our male there? Yep. We've got the American alligator. So the American alligator, often referred to as just the common alligator or the gator, is a large crocodilian that is native to the southeastern United States and is one of the 2 extant species of alligators, with the much rarer Chinese alligator obviously living in China. So these guys can get humongous. So an adult male American alligator can range between 3.4 and 4.6 meters long, or about 11.2 to 15.1 feet in length, and can weigh up to 453 kilograms, or about 999 pounds, with females on average being smaller, being between 2.6 and 3 meters, so 8.5 to 9.8 feet in length. And these guys live in all sorts of freshwater habitats, such as marshes, cypress swamps as well, lots of freshwater wetlands, pretty much where they can live. And they can be found from southern Texas to North Carolina. That's the northern part of the range. And they're particularly common around Florida. That's where they're kind of famous for being known. Really, really wonderful animals there. I love them. So they also live with the American crocodile, but you can tell the difference because they have a much broader snout, and they're also a lot more common. So typically, you're much more likely to see a gator than an American crocodile. But these guys, as I mentioned, get quite big. The largest I think recorded was about 5 to 6 meters. Let's see, the largest recorded about 19.2 feet, and may have weighed over 1,000 kilograms, or 2,200 pounds. So very, very big animals regardless. Well, this is the estimate from that, but I'm trying to find the largest one, because there's all sorts of different reports of animals like these. But the largest one killed in Alabama was 458.8 kilograms, and was weighed in 2014, so that's quite a recent one. And you want to look, obviously you could just use Wikipedia and other sources. There's some sexual dimorphism there that they have for, like in most alligators and most crocodilians, there's some sort of sexual dimorphism. So these guys, as you can see, they've got a very, very dark olive grey or brown, grey or black colour there to them. And even though they are on average a much darker color as well, they also have about 80 teeth that they shed throughout their life as they lose them. And you can tell the difference. Another difference between a crocodile and an alligator is that the teeth, only the top teeth will come out of there. And an alligator, in a crocodile, the bottom teeth from the bottom jaw will kind of mix through there, so it kind of looks like a goofy grin. But I just think alligators are so cool. And these guys actually have the strongest laboratory measured bite out of any living animal, which is quite comparable to saltwater crocodiles. Very, very powerful. They use this to eat their prey, which include pretty much everything from turtles, deer, just anything they can get their mouths around. They're not discriminatory. Really, really wonderful. And these guys, as I mentioned, they are least concerned with IUCN, but they have a really, really interesting conservation story. Because they were hunted so much for their skins to make bags and things, similar sort of story to the Arctic fox. Population declined, and they were put on the endangered species list in the late 70s. And now they've basically just rebounded since they breed so fast, and now you can sustainably hunt them. So that's a perfect example of how good conservation work can help preserve these animals and get them back to being very common, and also allow us to enjoy these animals and use them sustainably for products. So yeah, as I mentioned, they live in swamps and stuff where they find. We'll have a look at the female, and then we'll find the baby. We just found these habitats wherever they can. They also dig burrows that they use to kind of hide in, where they can hide in during dry seasons, and just another place for them to hide. There's also considered a keystone species because they will retain like water since they won't evaporate, so they become like little hides or little refugia for small amphibians and fish and things. So that's why they're also considered a keystone species, quote unquote. Really, really wonderful. And they will eat anything. And they've also been documented using tool use. So they will. They're also considered one of the first reptiles to use tools, and they're able to use put sticks on the head, and they use these sticks to attract birds that are looking for suitable nesting material, and then they'll come and grab it and eat it. So that's really, really cool. So as I mentioned, these guys are also ambush predators, so they kind of hunt in the water and just stay around and wait around for something to come around and chomp it. They eat pretty much anything. Large mammals, pythons, snakes, amphibians. Especially when they're younger, they'll eat small birds. Their diet does change a lot throughout their lifetime. And they've also been known to eat fruit, especially like grapes and citrus fruit. They're not very discriminatory, which is quite fun. And they're also quite famous. They have very, very strong bellows. They're very, very vocal. And they use these calls, such as bellowing and stuff, such as infrasound, to like for mating, also for dominance, to say, this is my patch, leave me alone. Really, really cool there. And then we'll talk about the breeding season while we have a look at this cute little baby. Definitely one of the best models Frontiera's made. I love this little baby gator. So very, very cute. And now we can watch them swim. So really, really wonderful. And you can see Mum over there. So Mum will usually lay about, after courting with their dad, and kind of maintaining, because the males will maintain the territory, have some females in there. The female lays about 20 to 50 eggs, which is about the same size as goose eggs, that she'll cover up with vegetation, and they are temperature dependent, like a lot of other reptiles. That means the sex will come out, depending what temperature is this baby's sex, will be male or female, usually lower being female, higher being male. And they usually incubate for about 65 days, where the female will stay around to protect them, and then when she hears the yelping, she'll go in and pretty much dig them out and carry them to the water with her mouth and take care of them. Crocodiles are very, very great mothers. And they have a very, very weird relationship with humans. They're kind of synonymous with Florida. You think Florida, you think alligators. There have been some attacks on humans, and even though their fatal attacks have been rather low, it's always given to be safe. I believe that since 1948, 257 documented attacks on humans in Florida have happened and been reported, with an estimated about 23 deaths. So that's one every couple of years, which sucks, but it's part of living with animals. There's also like alligator farming that's become a big thing, because people like alligator meat and also like their skins for leather and things. Also, alligator wrestling has become a sort of entertainment around the late 1880s, but there's been some callback on that because of animal rights issues. But yeah, a really, really wonderful species we've got here. How can you not love these wonderful boys? So I like this little gator. Definitely one of the best models Frontier's made, so we'll have a look at the Zoopedia. So yeah, least concern, estimated population 5 million. Doing very, very well, big boys. So we can see their range here from Florida, North Carolina. Very, very interesting range. Population 1 to 2, and I know a lot of people have been saying, oh, we need to have more, but one thing is that in zoos, they kind of just pack them in together, so it's kind of not representative. You can have more, but obviously sandbox. Males are territorial, they're promiscuous, they're confident with people, and kind of their habitat, I would want you to. Definitely some good sizes, 4 meters to 2.8 for male and female, 50 years estimate on averages, and a male weighs up to 230 kilograms on average, female 91. So age of sexual maturity for these guys is 11 years old, they're sterile until they're dead, number of offspring 1 to 4, gestation period about 3 months, breeding period 24 months, and they are easy to breed in captivity. And let's see what other facts we got. See, look, we mentioned that they can go through as many as 3,000 teeth in their lifetime. They have high blood cell counts that allows them to fight off bacteria. They're among the first reptiles I mentioned used to observe tools, to create alligator holes, and they are the second strongest laboratory measured bite force that is beaten only by saltwater crocodile. And let's see what they get on with. They get on with anyone, which kind of sucks, but that's alright. So now we're going to move on to the next animal. So we're about halfway. There we've done 4. We've got 4 more. So now we've got the North American Beaver. Really wonderful little guy here. I love me some beavers. Beavers are great. So the North American Beaver is one of the 2 species of extant living beavers, along with the Eurasian beaver. And they also often kind of confused, but really the easiest difference to tell is the Eurasian is slightly bigger. These guys are slightly smaller than the Eurasian species. But yeah, they are the largest rodent in North America and the second largest in the world. That is the first being, of course, everyone's favorite capybara. And the European species is slightly larger on average, but the American has the largest maximum size. So the adults usually weigh between 11 to 32 kilograms, or 24 to 71 pounds. With 20 kilos being typical, but there have been large animals that have gone up to about 40 kilos recorded. And they are also slightly smaller in body mass, but their head to body length of an adult one is average between 74 and 90 centimeters, or 29 to 35 inches, with the tail adding another 20 centimeters or 35 centimeters to that, so about 7.9 to 30.8 inches. And the exceptional individuals have been estimated to be as much as 40 kilos, even as much as 50, but those often can be kind of exaggerated. There's a wonderful guy run over here. I think he's going to use the enrichment, so we'll watch him there. So these guys, kind of like capybara as well, they are aquatic, and they're quite famous for building these dams. One thing as well is that these guys hate the sound of running water. So they'll often plug it up like they're going to do here. You can see him swimming there. Really, really wonderful little animation there. So they use their tail and their feet to paddle. They'll also use their feet to cover up, make their dams. They'll use mud and wood to make these dams. And they also have a nictitating membrane that allows them to see underwater, and can their ears and nostrils can seal up so they don't get water in their noses and in their ears. And they also have these webbed feet that they use. Oh, that was a cute little sound that they use to swim about. They also have a very, very dense fur, such as the double coat, which can range in a bunch of different colors, but is usually dark brown. And they use scent glands near the genitals that they can put oil over their fur to help make them waterproof. And there's also other oil glands that they can use to make sure they don't get waterlogged and keep themselves cool. These guys are found pretty much all over North America, and they're active at night, and they're excellent swimmers and can stay submerged of up to 15 minutes. And they will create these big dams here that are pretty much considered they're considered keystone species as well. They make these dams which reduce the flow of water which can create habitat wetlands for all sorts of different animals, such as amphibians, fish, birds. They are very important in their ecosystems as well, and they're also known for dam building. Pretty much found all over the US, except for the most northerly or southerly parts, pretty much found under the tree line. But they have been introduced into Patagonia and parts of Europe, which because the European beaver is much more endangered. So, yeah. They are very social, they have very high communication. They use scent marking and displays to communicate with each other. Let's see, have a look at the baby swimming. Is that a baby? Yeah, that's a baby. The juvenile. Talk about the baby that they use. And they live in these, they usually mate for life, and they form these familial communities. And the young kits are born precocious, so they have a developed coat and they're able to swim. And they usually remain with their parents about 2 years, and they can express some adult behaviours, but they stay for their parents a long time so they can learn how to build their dams and kind of just learn about things. Really, really cute little guy here. So their diet, in terms of generalists, they pretty much eat anything. They'll eat a lot of woody plants, also herbaceous plants. They like aspen, birch, black cherry, oak, pine and spruce as well. They'll eat cattails and other water lilies along with other aquatic vegetation. So yeah, that's a lot of their diet. Willow is also a pretty important protein source for them. And they are predated by animals such as black bears, mountain lions, coyotes and wolves. That's kind of their common predators. And also southern parts of their range, such as Canada lynx, bobcats, American alligators. Can eat them, but they don't really mix ranges too much. Bald eagles have been known to occasionally attack beavers that are most likely about small kits like this guy. But there has been evidence, despite reputed claims, there is no evidence that shows that American river otters hunt beavers, that they may occasionally take a small kit like this guy. So talking about the North American beaver, they have one litter per year, and they come into estrus only 12 to 24 hours between late December and May, and peak in January. So unlike most other rodents, these guys I mentioned monogamous. They'll stay together through multiple breeding seasons, and they will gestate for about 128 days. They range up to 3 to 6 kits per litter, averaged 4 to 5. They do not reproduce until 3 years after they're of age. They do not reproduce until they are 3 years of age, and about 20% of young adult females reproduce before then. So, of 2-year-old females reproduce. So yeah, as I mentioned, they were a big conservation thing for these guys. They were pretty much extirpated from most of the areas. A similar story to the Eurasian beaver, but they've made a great recovery. I believe they're considered least concern now as well. They were used to make beaver hats and food and all that. So also they're believed to be a pest because they obviously made these dams that blocked up water and flooded agricultural land that people didn't want. So they were considered pests, but luckily there were good conservation programs that were put in place, especially early on, that allowed them to come back to really good numbers, and I believe they're only increasing or stagnated because they kind of reached their natural populations. But in some areas they are considered invasive species, especially in Europe and Patagonia. But yeah, still really, really wonderful beavers here. So we'll have a look at the Zoopedia. Least concern, populations 10 million to 15 million. Plenty of them around, so they're doing quite well. Pretty much all of North America mentioned, except probably northern parts of the tree line. Don't know why Hawaii's open up there. Also, group sizes about 2 to 8, 2 to 2 as well, for bachelor groups. The parents are leading the family, so the parents are the boss. They are monogamous, neutral habitats, neutral to humans, and guests can enter the habitats, even though they can be dangerous. They have been known to kill people, similar to the case with the giant anteater. Average size, as I mentioned, about 82 centimeters long. Life expectancy about 15 years, 21.5 kilos on average. Sexual maturity about 2 years old, as I mentioned. Sterility age is death. About 1 to 5 babies per breeding event or mating event. Gestation period of about 2 months, just quite short. I think it's about 4 or 5 months in real life. Enter birth period about 12 months, and they are difficult to breed in captivity. So other facts we mentioned. North American beavers can remain underwater for up to 15 minutes. Also, they can recognize their relatives even if they're born several years apart or not met. They also slap their tails on the surface in response to danger. North American beavers are known to store food branches underwater near lodges so they can have food throughout the winter. And I mentioned this, they have an oil called sorium, which uses to waterproof its fur and can be used in perfumes and food production, and don't like anyone. So yeah, they also added cool enrichment, as I mentioned. So there's these beaver pond here, so it's already resorted, so they come and do things to try and, because they hate running water, so they will come and plug that up. Also, there's the underwater feeder here. Oh, did it go under the water? Did it go under the water? So we can see here, I believe one's probably going to be coming up for a feed. Look at these. So this is the underwater feeder for the herbivores. But yeah, we're going to move on to the next animal. So we're going to move it on from the beaver. We're going to be moving on to the moose. So we're on our third to last animal. This is typically the American moose. Look at this big male. Really, really big guy. So the moose, or known in Eurasia, the elk, which can be quite confusing because there is the elk or the waipati in North America. They are a species of the New World deer subfamily and the largest and heaviest extant deer species. They typically live in broad and mixed forests across the northern hemisphere and temperate and subantarctic climates. And yeah, pretty interesting that way. Let me check the sizes. The antlers, they also have these pretty charismatic antlers that they grow yearly. The largest ones of any live today, which makes sense for an animal that's the largest of its group alive today. And the antlers of a mature Alaskan bull moose can get greater than 200 centimeters or 79 inches, so that's over 2 meters. And the widest spread recorded was about 210 centimeters, 83 inches. And the record is about 36 kilos for the largest set of antlers. So, about size and weight, and on average an adult moose will stand between 1.4 to 2.1 meters, or 4.6 to 6.9 feet tall at the shoulder, which is about 30 centimeters taller than the next deer, the waipati, also known as the elk, which is kind of confusing. So males, or bulls, you typically get between 380 to 700 kilograms, or 838 to 1,543 pounds, and females, or cows, typically get between 200 and 490, or 441 and 1,080 pounds, depending on kind of individual variation, clines, things like that. The average head to body length for these guys is also about 2.4 to 3.1 meters, or 7.9 to 10.2 feet, with a small tail about 10 to 15 centimeters. Yeah, pretty big guys. They get an average about they can get up to like 7 foot at the shoulder. There have been records of moose basically getting like over a ton, but a lot of them have not been authenticated. And they are very big among these areas, but they are only really dwarfed by the 2 species of bison that they live with. So yeah, also have these really cool little dewlap that they've got there. This guy's swimming. They've also got pretty big hooves that they use to swim around. And you can see they've got these big proboscis that they can seal shut because they like to browse aquatically, that we'll get into. So yeah, pretty cool. So these guys are browsing herbivores, so they'll eat pretty much whatever they can in terms of browse. They can't really eat grasses since they can't really deal with lots of cellulose. They'll tend to eat like willow and birch, and also a large part of their diet includes aquatic plants, and that allows them to dive. So they can dive up to 5 meters deep into waters to feed on aquatic plants. And sadly, the in-game they don't dive, but I assume they'll probably put it in an update. But I think these guys are just so wonderful. I think he's having issues getting out. We might just help him move. We'll do that. We'll talk about the female. So slightly smaller. But these guys are natural predators. A full-grown moose is also preyed on in their Eurasian part of their range by Siberian tigers, but also packs of wolves. Wolverines have been known to eat moose and kill young moose. American black bears, killer whales are also known to have hunted moose. There have been records of moose getting eaten by orcas. Also, Greenland shark. So that tells you how much they get around. They are mostly diurnal, but are generally solitary, and the strongest bonds you'll see between them is a mother and a calf, mother and calf. With rutting usually occurring between September and October, the mature bulls will cease kind of all feeding and kind of go and fight each other. And the males are polygamous, so they'll seek several females and kind of maintain like a breeding harem. And usually the female moose have about an 8-month gestation period, with usually about one calf, but sometimes they'll have twins. If food is plentiful. In May or June, twin rates can be high as 30 to 40% with good nutrition. And the young will stay with their mother until the next generation is born. And usually a lifespan of a moose will be about 15 to 25 years. So our moose population is stable at 25 calves per 100 cows at 1 year of age. So as long as it stays at that, the populations are stable. And they're not usually aggressive towards humans, but if they are provoked, they will attack. They actually attack more people than bears and wolves combined, even though it's usually a minor coincidences. So yeah, they're pretty dangerous, and also they're just so large. They've got big hooves they can kick you with. You've got to be careful around moose. Though luckily they aren't spotted too often. As I mentioned, they are found pretty much across northern Eurasia and North America. And they pretty much live in any habitat that's cool enough. They do not like warmer temperatures. They like places with lots of water, also lots of browse as well. Very kind of selective habitats, but luckily their habitat's quite common. They're found all across North America. Parts of it was northern parts of North America. I think the most southern part of their range is kind of like Wyoming and stuff, or Idaho and Washington. Yeah, it's pretty much at Colorado as well. They live in these cooler areas. But there have been declining populations since the 1990s, especially across a lot of temperate North America due to parasites from white-tailed deer spreading. Also predation by brown bears and stuff has kind of increased. Another big thing is human-caused climate change that has pushed themselves north because of changing temperatures. But they are luckily still in large numbers in places like Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Poland. But there have been reintroductions and also efforts, either by themselves or people like rewilding Europe. They've been actually, I believe, trying to move them into Germany, and they're just naturally coming. And another really interesting little tidbit, there was a population, this is like a local thing for me, there were about 10 moose in 1910 that were introduced to Hokitika, which is in the South Island of New Zealand, and they were introduced into Fiordland, and they're kind of like a cryptid here, which is pretty cool. The last proven sighting of a moose was in the 50s, about 1952, but DNA evidence as recent as 2002 was found of a moose, so they can be kind of like a cryptid, but they're not like Bigfoot because we actually know that they were there, and we have records and videos and such. So yeah, really cool. Very common across northern parts and doing quite well. They're considered least concern. But I mentioned issues like climate change, also getting hit by cars, another big issue. Vehicle collisions, yep. They're often hunted as well. So yeah, just as long as they're well managed, they will be fine. So yeah, we'll have a look at the Zoopedia when we talk about them. So they are considered near threatened. They're not endangered, but most of their range populations are stable, though there are kind of some issues in some areas. As we can see here, they're found pretty much around this belt here. They like trees, so you can I believe that they've lived in southern parts of Germany in history. But yeah, still moving around, really nice range. So they like groups about 1 to 4, so 1 male up to 3 males. Only allowed 1 male, but you can have up to 4 females. Bulls will fight over mates. Antler size over determines victory. Mating size system is polygamous. They're confident when humans can't enter enclosure. For sizes, adult males on average get about 2 meters at the shoulder. Female 1.8, live about 20 years. Average male is about 500 kilograms. Average female is about 370 kilograms. Age of sexual maturity as well. About 2 years. They breed until they die. 1 baby per breeding event. 8 months gestation period, 12 months interbirth period, and difficult breeding captivity. And let's have a look at the largest, heaviest species deer. The call of the female moose during mating season can be heard 3.2 kilometers away. The tongue, gums, and lips are very tough to allow them to pick up chewy and very woody material. They have no upper teeth, but very sharp lower front teeth. And during the mating season, male moose may become so aggressive that they will attack indiscriminately. They've been known to attack humans, wolves, deer, and bears. And moose attacks are the most frequent kind of animal attacks in America. So if you hear all these people saying, oh, animals are just herbivores are just big and friendly. You thought wrong, and they don't like anyone, sadly. But still a really wonderful animal regardless. I really love this moose. I just hope they dive. And we'll have a look at the baby. Look at this cute little baby moose. Very, very cute. So yeah, very, very cute little baby moose. We'll have a move them up. Very, very cute. So now we're going to move on to the cougar. So we've already covered this guy's, covered most of these guys in mod spotlights anyway, but we need to talk about this guy. I really love this model. So this is the cougar. So the cougar, also known as the mountain lion, panther, the puma. It's got many, many different names. So these guys are native to the Americas. They can be found pretty much from Patagonia all the way up to the Yukon, and they used to be found a lot more in the eastern US, but have been extirpated because of human hunting. They're the second largest cat in the New World after the jaguar, and they are generally pretty solitary in nature. They are both crepuscular and nocturnal, so they come out during the night or early parts of the evening and dusk. So they will come out during the day, it doesn't matter. They are an ambush predator. They'll feed on almost anything that's big enough. They mainly feed on deer and elk and things like that, but they also be known to hunt insects and rodents, and their preferred habitat is rocky areas with dense underbrush for stalking. And they are territorial and live in low population densities where they pretty much find an abundance of prey. And they're not always the apex predator where they live. They will have to contend with sometimes jaguars, grizzly bears, wolves, coyotes, and American alligators, black bears, places like that. And yeah, still really, really cool. They are the fourth largest cat species in the worldwide. The adults can stand between 60 and 90 centimeters, or 24 to 35 inches at the shoulder. Adult males are about 2.4 meters, or 7 foot 10 long from nose to tip. Females average about 2.5 meters, 2.05, or 6 foot 9, and overall range between 0.15 to 2.75, or 4 foot 11 to 9 foot 0, nose to tail length suggests the species in general. They also on average get between 53 and 100 kilograms, or 117 to 220 pounds, but they get an average about 68 kilograms, with females weighing generally about 55 kilograms on average, between a range of 29 and 64 kilograms, which is about 64 to 141 pounds. And they get smaller. This is called the Bergman's rule. They are typically smallest towards the equator, and they get the largest towards the poles. And the largest cougar, I believe, shot in 1901, weighed a little over 100 to 105 kilograms. And there's also been claims of ones over about like 118, but they're most likely exaggerated. So as I mentioned, these guys pretty much found all over America. They can be found from the Yukon all the way down to southern parts of Patagonia. Really, really wonderful. I believe what's the population? There are areas where they've been extirpated, as I mentioned, from the eastern US and other smaller areas, but there are works to reintroduce them, especially populations like the Florida panther. They are at risk. So, aside from humans, there's no species that really preys on them in the wild, even though they conflict with other predators and scavengers, such as grey wolves, black bears, and grizzly bears. And yeah, they will pretty generalist. They'll pretty much feed. They'll eat insects to large ungulates. They can be up to 500 kilograms. They're ogopic carnivores. They'll feed on mule deer, white-tailed deer, elk, and even bull moose sometimes. They'll also eat feral horses, Dall sheep, bighorns, caribou, mountain goats, coyotes, American badgers, and pronghorns. Pretty much whatever they can. And even in some parts of the range, they'll feed on California sea lions, and American minks. These guys are mostly solitary, so only mothers will live in groups with their kittens, and their adults will meet rarely. They live in different sized territories, so a very large male's territory can be about 150 to 1,000 square kilometers, while female range about half that. And usually these ranges will intersect with different females, so kind of there'll be a male with a large run and a female's kind of couple in there that he'll breed with, if you can. So they will mark these territories like other cats, such as urinating in feces and also scraping leaves and things to mark their territory. And these ranges will also depend a lot on food availability, terrain, and vegetation. And females will reach sexual maturity. We'll have a look at the females. That's a male, female here. Wonderful female. Let's see if we can have a look at the babies, since we are talking about them. Oh, there. Look at you, cutie. Look at these cute little cute little cougars. So females reach sexual maturity about 1.5 years old to 3 years of age, and they typically have one litter every 2 to 3 years. Females will become an estrus about 8 days of a 23-day cycle, and the gestation period is approximately about 91 days. Females are sometimes reported to be monogamous, but it's kind of uncertain. Litter size generally ranges from 1 to 6 cubs, typically 2, and you can see these cubs are born blind and they're completely dependent on their mother for the first few weeks of their lives. And you can see they've got these really cool little patterns on them while he's moonwalking up, Michael Jackson style. See all these cute little spots on them that help them to camouflage. And the kitten survival rate usually is just 1 per litter, sadly. And you can see they have these spots that will fade as they grow into the adult colours. I don't know why you're moonwalking. Let's see if we can find the other one. There's got to be another one in here. I'm pretty sure there's another one here. Are you stuck there? Let me just move you down here. There we are. So, yeah, as I mentioned, they also have young adults will meet their mother about 2 years of age, and sometimes earlier, especially males, and they showed that the highest mortality rate among cougars, they travel farthest from their maternal range, and males will also disperse a lot farther than females because they have to find larger territories. And the life expectancy in the wild is reported to be between 8 and 13 years, and probably average about 8 to 10. And a female that was at least 18 years old was reportedly killed on Vancouver Island. Though in captivity, they could live up to 20 years. Causes of death include disability, disease, competition from other cougars, starvation, accidents, human hunting, feline immunodeficiency virus, and that's HPV, HIV type virus that is in cats and well adapted to cougars, so that can affect their survival. Let's have a look at the parents or the run around. Really, really wonderful little guy here. But yeah, as I mentioned, these guys are considered least concern, but there are populations that are at risk, especially the Florida panther. As they're found everywhere and they're quite common, considered least concern. But the Florida panther is a population that's been isolated in the Florida peninsula because of human hunting. And these guys are pretty interesting because they are also quite leaner. There's lots of variation morphology-wise. And in North America, they, as I mentioned, hunted, and attacks on humans are pretty rare, but they are common. Between 1890 and 1919, about 53 attacks were reported and confirmed about 48 non-fragile injuries, and 10 deaths came from cougars, so generally they just avoid you. And they do prey on domestic animals, so they can be an issue with farmers, and often become like a mythological figure in a lot of ancient cultures, such as Native American culture and such. Yeah, really, really nice model. So yeah, let's take a look at this guy's Wikipedia. So cougar, or Puma concolor, least concern, pretty much found. If we included other parts of where they used to live, they'd be all across the eastern US, and also can be found in Alaska. Very, very big range for a cat. So they usually live in 1 to 2, and usually one male, one female. Have no dominance hierarchy because they live by themselves. They're polygamous. They're shy as well, and guests can't enter the habitat. They get between 0.75 and 0.7 meters tall at the shoulder. About 12 years life expectancy, and about 68 to 55 kilos on average. So age of sexual maturity is about 3 years age. They breed until they die. They'd have 1 to 4 cubs before offspring per a mating event. 3 months gestation, an interbirth period of about 2 years, and on average breeding captivity. So let's have a look. They have large paws and the largest hind legs of any felid related to their body side. Despite being the 4th largest cat species, they're not considered a big cat, because they lack the bones and organs to roar. It's technically, yeah, that's true. It's just they're not related to Panthera. They are more related to things like cheetahs. They also can't roar, but they can make sounds comparable to domestic cats. Cougar cubs are born with back spots that add as camouflage, and they lose this pattern about 6 months of age, as we mentioned. They're also strong swimmers and able to cross lakes, but like most cats, prefer to stay out of the water. And yet, they don't like anyone. So yeah, really cool cougars. And now we're going to move on to the last animal. Last but most definitely not least, we have got the California sea lion. Where is one of them? Let's have a look at this. As a male here. Really, really wonderful animal here, aren't they? So the California sea lion, also known as just the sea lion, is the coastal aired sea lion that is native to western North America, and they're one of the 6 species of sea lion, and they range from about southern Alaska to central Mexico, including the Gulf of California, but they typically breed in the middle parts of their range, although there's a small breeding population on Vancouver Island, I believe. So these guys get pretty big. They differ a lot, especially being sexual dimorphic. They can get different size and shape. You can see the males here. They have like this big bulbous forehead. They're also much larger. A male can get between 2.7 or get up to around 2.7 or 8.9 feet long and weigh about 350 kilograms or 770 pounds. While the females, you can see smaller. With a female here. I'll have a look at the female. There's some babies there. This is a male. This is a female. See, the female is a lot more slim. They typically get about 2.1 meters or 6.9 feet and weigh to 100 kilograms. So females and juveniles have this like brown coat, but the males can get gray and even black. So brown to black to dark brown. So that's just variation within them. Have a look at her sleep. Isn't she cute? So these guys. Like other types of seals and sea lions, and unlike other seals, they will use their flippers to swim, unlike not swimming like a fish. And they're able to use this kind of traverse much more open in water. And they also have color vision, though this is limited to blue and green areas of the color spectrum, which is believed to be an adaptation for them to live in coastal areas and in marine waters. They also rely on their whiskers to be able to detect vibrations in the water. And compared to harbour seal, these guys have less specialised and smoother vibrissae or whiskers, and they thus perform lengths with following hydrodynamic traits, but still perform well. So as I mentioned, these guys are found along the western coast and islands of North America. There's believed to be about 5 different genetic clades. The US stock breeds mainly in the Channel Islands, but they also breed in Northern California, and also a bunch of different areas, especially around Mexico. And there was actually believed to be vagrants that have been found as far west North Pacific on the Commander Islands. But there also used to be the Japanese sea lion, which became extinct, sadly, because of hunting. But during the breeding season, they'll typically get on these islands and beaches and things where they haul up and also molt. And non-breathing individuals will gather on marinas and wharves and even navigational buoys, and they can actually live in fresh water for periods of time, such as the Bonneville Dam, nearly 150 miles or 240 kilometers up the Columbia River. And also one that was found in the middle of California that was almost 100 miles from the San Francisco Bay, which is pretty interesting. So let's go and talk about, let's find the male. There's a male. Oh. Watch them swim around. There's a black one there. Really, really nice. So, these guys feed on pretty much whatever they can get their mouths around. A variety of seafood. They have a seafood diet. They eat it. They feed mainly on squid, fish, sometimes clams. And particular fish they like is salmon, anchovy, herring, dogfish, squid. They'll sometimes cooperate with other predators as well, such as seabirds, porpoises, and dolphins. And they sometimes follow the dolphins to exploit their hunting efforts. And they are preyed upon by killer whales and large sharks, especially white sharks or great white sharks, and have been often seen with attacks by them. And sharks also attack sea lions by ambushing them while they're resting at the surface, and sea lions that have been attacked by their hindquarters are most likely to survive, as they can swim to shore. And the life history of these guys, they breed in these big rookeries or colonies between May and August, where they arrive. They will establish a territory, and they will fast and live off their blubber. And the size and patience of the male to defend his territory will basically give him the best chance to raise a bunch of offspring. And after this, he will rely on displays and stuff to maintain his territory, make sure his females hang around with him. And they typically will hand up groups of 2 to 20 individuals in these territories. And female California sea lions, they have about a 12-month reproduction cycle that consists of a 9-month gestation and a 3-month delayed implantation of the fetus. So yeah, we'll have a look while we're talking about the babies. There's a little baby there. Aren't you very, very cute? Very, very adorable. So these interbirth intervals can be particularly long in this species, and it can be 21 days for sea lions off California, more than 30 days in these guys. So the females will remain with their pups on shore for 10 days and nurse them. After that, the females will go on foraging trips that will last as long as 3 days and will return to nurse their cubs for up to a day. So they kind of have a day where they feed their pups, then go around, just run around, do the shopping trips. And where this is when the pups will tend to kind of hang around with other pups and play around. But they tend to leave the offshore to go to the nurseries to socialize and play. And when they return, they'll call their pups, and then they'll come up and feed from their mother. As they get older, they'll become involved in these reunions. And then sometimes older pups will actually join their mothers in foraging trips. And although the older and the adult male sea lions do not really care about their babies, they do take more interest in their adult males of other species, and have been actually observed to help shield swimming pups from predators, and are usually weaned after a year, but they can continue to suckle for another year. So these guys also have a bunch of different vocalizations. They use this characteristic bark as well, and they will also bark rapidly when excited. They'll also use different ones to establish territory, and also grunts and things. But the females are less vocal, so they have a bunch of belches and growls and things, which is pretty interesting. These guys are also pretty intelligent. These are the species that are most commonly seen in marine parks for training. They've also been used, I believe, in military applications, I mean. So they'll kind of use them to detect mines and swim with divers and kind of give things. It's really, really cool though, even though Peter's kind of been like, oh, you shouldn't be using animals in military situations, but we've kind of been doing that forever. We used horses, elephants. Yeah, but just neither here nor there. They are luckily considered least concern because they have a large population. The estimated population in the US Pacific is about 238,000 or 241,000 in the US, and it's believed to be close to carrying capacity, while some populations have declined, sadly. They are luckily protected, which outlaws killing them, but there have been some increases due to some crises such as climate change, especially heat waves, but also annual killings. There's been state government annual killings that have been happened, and they killed 93 sea lions per year, which is not going to take a huge hit of population. It's just what they're allowed to do. But yeah, there are some issues, especially climate change, also garbage, poaching, getting entangled in garbage, and also pollutants like DDT and PCBs, which accumulate in these guys, can cause illnesses and reproductive illnesses and things. So yeah, now we'll go into these guys' Zoopedia. So yeah, wild population, about 400,000. We'll have a look at the range. So you've pretty much found, yep, around here. The breeding range is typically around in here. Species data, 3 to 15, up to 5 males and 15 females. Bachelor groups, 3 to 5, females 3 to 15. Males are territorial. Older males are more likely to hold onto quality territory. Mating systems, polygamous, confident, and guests can't enter the habitat. Sizes, as I mentioned, 2.35 meters long, 1.95 meters long, and they can get 22 years to 27 years in life expectancy. Weight, 300 kilos and 90 kilos. They're extremely sexual dimorphic. So the age of sexual maturity for these guys is also about 5 years old, and they will breed till they die. Number of offspring is typically 1 per mating event. Gestation and incubation period is about 11 months. The interbirth period is about 13 months, and they are average to breeding captivity. Let's have a look. They are also the fastest seal. They can swim at the speeds of 25 miles per hour. California sea lions have been known to dive to depths of about 274 meters and can remain underwater for 10 minutes. Mentioned they used by the seals, named used by the navies. That's pretty cool. And unlike other sea lion species, they do not have a pronounced mane. And as opposed to true seals, California sea lions and other air seals are adapted to movement on land as in the water. Their bone structure allows them to utilize front and hind limbs for walking. So as you can see here, we'll see there's probably ones sitting on land here. They will kind of walk almost, but like other seals, they kind of have to drag themselves. You see like that. So they kind of can see they kind of walk. Yeah, really wonderful. Ooh, disappeared. It's still cool regardless. Really, really wonderful. But I think we missed out on last thing. They don't get on with anyone. So yeah, that was all 8 animals from the North American Animal Pack. Hopefully this came up pretty well. Kind of went through all of them and gave a little bit of education. So yeah, I believe this to be a great place to end the video. So I really, really, really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys like and subscribe. Always remember to hit the little bell icon to get notified of loading thing. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys like and subscribe. And bye-bye.